Hey everyone, I wanted to take a minute and talk about lists without having to deal with Pygame Zero. So it got kind of difficult there with the rockets and the missiles and all that stuff. So let's talk a little bit about lists just with some simple numbers. So if you would please join me by opening up Thawny and going down to the interactive shell. I've gone ahead and just scrolled all the way up. And I just want to go over a little bit about lists and what you need to be able to do with them. And then we're going to look at a couple of example programs and how you might do some things with the list. So I'm just going to call this, unfortunately I can't say list, it's a reserved word. So I'm going to start with just nums for a list of numbers. So first of all, we make a list by using the square brackets in Python. So as soon as I do that, this is a list. I can call the special function called type, and it'll tell you that it's a list. Notice that it says class list. That's because this is a special classification. There is a list factory that's what a class does. It makes things. So because it is a list, we have several different things that we can do. Because it's an object, right? We've talked a little bit about objects so far. Our actor is an object. So objects have what are called methods. They're kind of like functions, but they belong to it. So functions belong to like the entire program. They belong to everything. And so a method belongs just to that object. And so I press the period and then I hit the tab button and it brings up a list of different things I can do. Notice I've got clear, append, copy, count, extend, index, insert, pop, remove, reverse, and sort. So lots of different options for things that we can do. Let's start with the append. You need to know how to append to a list. To append to a list is to add something to a list. You'll notice now that I have a list and my value is 7. I can append again. All right. And I can do that. I can also do, I could use like a loop to kind of append lots of different things. Let's do import random. And I'll say for I in range 15, nums.append. I'm going to move this up towards kind of more to the top of the screen. There we go. There we go. You can see the bottom of my desktop, I guess, but at least you won't have to look down at the bottom as much. Okay, so I've got nums.append, and I'm just going to say random.randint. I'll say 1 to 20. All right, let's take a look at nums now. Now, we're not studying the randint function from the random module, so don't worry if that was like, wait, what is that? I just wanted to quickly generate a bunch of numbers. So now I've got a nice, good, long list. So what is it that you need to be able to do with a list once you've created it? Well, you need to know how to get how big the list is. And that's with the function len. So len nums. 17. Len is a really cool function. You can even use it for strings like hello world, and you'll notice that it tells me that there are 11 characters, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. But what's really important about the len is that you understand that you cannot access the value at length. So if I try and say nums bracket 17, that's not going to work. It's out of range, okay? The way you access an element in the list is to say that you want to, let me turn off my email right quick, is to say a square bracket and then put in the index where you want it. So these numbers here are the values, and they're at index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if I say nums bracket 7, I should get a 16. All right. You can print a list as well, one item at a time, by saying for I in range len nums, and this allows us to quickly print everything. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say print, and I'm going to print I, and I'm going to print nums bracket I. So what happened there is that I'm printing the index, and you'll notice that the I just goes up. For I in range len nums, I goes from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up. But the corresponding element, the element in index 0 is 7, and index 1 is 19, index 2 is 9, index 3 is 14, index 4 is 10, etc. So that kind of shows the relationship between the value and its index, okay? So what else do we need to be able to do with the list? Well, we need to be able to remove from it. So let's take a look at nums again. If I wanted to say remove the number 7, let's say nums.remove, and I can put in the value that I wanted. Now that's not the index. That's the number 7. Well, I had 7 appear a few times in this list. Which one did it remove? It removed the first one. Let's do it again. Nums.remove 7. Now you'll see that it removed this one. So the nums.remove, what it does is it starts at the beginning and goes all the way through the list until it finds a number that matches, finds an item that matches what you're trying to remove, and removes that. There's another way to remove, and that's by removing from an index, which is what we will do quite often. And that's the function called, or the method called pop. So let's say I want to remove this 10. That 10 is at index 0, 1, 2, 3. And notice that it returns what it pops. And that allows you to check that it's the right thing or use it. A lot of times we have stuff in a list waiting to be used, like a waiting room, and we pop it out of the waiting room, and then we go and we do stuff with it, make it, move around the screen or something. But now that we're done, that was just in that list to hold it till we're ready. So notice that it's done. Notice that all the numbers, we removed this number, and all the other numbers slid forward. So the new index 3 is now the 5, not the 10. So we need to be able to append to a list. We need to be able to remove from a list, which we need to be able to pop from an index, okay? And be able to get through a size. Now let's talk about iterating. If you want to iterate through your list, okay, to iterate is to go through one at a time. The easiest way to do that is to say for I in nums, print I. I'm actually going to just, I'm going to do a little trick here. I'm going to say end equals, so it'll print it all horizontally for me. So what does that mean? For I in nums, it's called what we call like an enhanced for loop. The I literally became each one of these things. I do not really like to use the letter I when doing that, because I usually stands for the index, which is the location. So my list is usually a plural. Like if I have a list of apples, it would be apples. I'd say for apple and apples, and this is a singular. But that's going to do the same thing, because Python doesn't care what I call this variable. It's just a temporary placeholder that ran through and made that, okay? So that is the simplest way to iterate through. But when you do that, you can't do anything else. You can view them. If they're I think we have a list of missiles, and we call the missiles to move or to draw, we could do that. But if we are going to remove a missile, perhaps have another missile collide with something else and interact and then remove, anytime you have to move things around, it's not a good idea, because you're not actually having control of the list. So this is the way I typically like to show iterating through with the for loop. For I in range len nums. This gives me a lot more control, because now I have control over the index. I know exactly which one I'm at. So I is the index, and the way that you get an item is with the bracket around the I. And again, I'm just going to, that overrides the new line from print, so it'll do it all in the same line. Does the same thing. but I have control over the index when I find something. So, for example, I might say if I is equal to, nums bracket I is equal to, let's say, greater than or equal to 14, then print I'm going to say index I has a number bigger than 14. This is something I totally couldn't do with the loop here. I would have no idea what index I was when I found that number or how to access it again later. So now you can see that I know that stuff. I can find it. It's at index 0, 2, 4, 9, and 10. So if I wanted to remove a value from the list or access a specific number, I know that those values meet the criteria. So a lot more powerful. There's another way to iterate through the list, and that's what's called a while loop. So when you do a while loop, you have to make the variable first. So I'm going to let I be what I iterate through, start at 0. And I'll say while I is less than len nums. And then I can say print nums bracket I. And I'll go ahead and, again, do that little trick to make it print all in one line. And there it goes. So while loop, it has a little more work on your part. You have to create this here. Then you have to remember to iterate it or else it'll never end. It'll just print the very first number over and over again. So that's another way to do that. It keeps us having control over the I, but there's one more thing it allows us to do. It allows us to remove. So we can't remove from a list while using a for loop. Let me talk about why. So if I have, and I love to picture lists because they're nice and compartmentalized. I like to picture them as like boxes that are next to each other. Okay, so there's our first box. All right, our second box, our third box. All right. And so each one of these things have stuff in it. Let's say we had it full of a number. So like 7, 12, 3, 4, 9, 10, and 8. So the length of this list is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the length, the len function would give me 7. If I start looping through the list and try and remove, let's say I want to remove every number bigger than 4, well, the first thing I'm going to come across is this 7. And what's going to happen is I'm going to remove it from the list, and then everything else is going to slide forward. Okay, and then this, hold on a second. And then the list is it's gone. I removed it. That element is gone. I now have a list of only 6. So that's one of the problems with the for loop, because when I say for I in range len, we'll say this was called nums. Well, when I started, the length of my nums was 7. Well, that 7 gets put right here. And range is going to return, for I in range 7, range is a function that actually gives it a range from 0 up to, but not including 7. And that's set in stone. Once that happens, it's over. Okay? That is, we have predefined that I will be these numbers. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It never goes back and changes that. So all of a sudden, when I make my list smaller, that doesn't change. Oh, I'm sorry, 7 wasn't part of it because it was a length of 7, so the last index is 6. I think we know that now, right? So that doesn't change. And so what happens is when I remove that 7, eventually I'm going to come to the end here and I'm going to try and access this, and it's an error. It's not going to work because I removed something. Let me show you what I mean. Let's see here. I'm going to remove any number that is equal to 18. So I'm going to say for I in range len nums, if nums bracket I is equal to 18, so two equal signs, then I'm going to remove that value. And the way we remove that value is with a pop. So nums, I could say nums.remove 18, but I'm going to say nums.pop I. Okay. And let's see what happens when I do that. List index out of range. So what happened was it doesn't realize I removed this, and it runs out of indices. Because once I remove, I have less indices. And notice I did do the range in len nums. If I tried to do for I in nums, it really doesn't work. All right, so there's one other silly thing, that reason why this doesn't work. Let's say I wanted to remove every number that was bigger than 8. So let's change that to bigger than or equal to, well, do I have to do 8? Let me see. I'm going to do bigger than or equal to 13. And let's see what happens. All right, well, we definitely got an error. We expected to get an error, and that error is going to happen a lot because we're going to have here 2, 3, 4. We would expect it's going to happen way early, so it's not going to finish at all. And then let's see here. We have, whoa, wait a minute. I said to remove the number that was greater than or equal to 13. Do you notice that it didn't? It removed the 19. It didn't remove the 9. It removed the 14. It didn't remove the 5. It removed the 16. But then it didn't remove the 13. Why didn't it? Well, the reason why is actually quite simple. So I'm trying to explain the second reason why a for loop is a disaster when trying to remove from a list. So let's go back to this example. If I have, let's say I'm trying to remove everything that's 9 or greater, okay? Just for simplicity's sake, let's say that this is not a 12 anymore. Let's make this like a 5. Okay? So I'm going to remove everything that's 9 or greater. Well, I start with I. I starts right here, okay? That's not a problem. That's not 9 or greater, so I moves here. Then it moves here. Then it moves here. Okay, that's a problem. This 9 gets removed. This 10 slides down. This 8 slides down. And then I moves up. Did you catch what happened? The 10 slid down where the 9 was, and the I slid up. Because in a for loop, the I automatically does some work and moves forward. It iterates forward automatically. When in fact, it should have stayed where it was. Does that make sense? It should have stayed where it was because we were going to slide everything down. Long story short, we need a while loop so that we can control the I, and a while loop will check the length of the nums every time. So one more time, let's do that. Let's say while, I'm going to make I'll just use I again. I equals 0, and I'll say while I is less than the len of nums. I'm going to say if nums bracket I is greater than or equal to, let's say 8. So we should definitely lose both the 10 and the 9 there. Then I'm going to say nums.pop I. Else, what should I do else? So what we're going to say is if there's a number bigger than this, bigger than 8, pop it. So that 9 pops off, everything slides forward. I shouldn't move the I up because now the 5's at the front. But what if I try and pop and I say, oh, wait, when I equals 1, oh, 5 is not bigger than 8. So then I will increase my I because I've said I've checked that one, so I'm all done. And that's going to do it. It's going to have 5, 7, and 4. Those are the only numbers that were not bigger than or equal to 8. So hopefully that made some sense. Let's do one example problem in code. So let's make a list. And we'll say 9, -1, 8, 6, -4, 12, 36, 18, 17, 7, 3, -8, 2, 1, 4. All right. All right. So now what I want to do is I want to remove from nums every number that is not an even number. So let me show you how to do that. In order to do that, I need to use what's called the modulo operator. The modulo operator gives you the remainder when you divide. So for example, and it's the percent sign, 10 mod 2 is 0. -10 mod 2 is also 0. If I do 10 mod 3, that's not going to be 0, because if I divide 10 by 3, it goes into it 3 times, but with a remainder of 1. 11 mod 3 would be 2. So what I'm going to say is in I equals 0, while I is less than the length of nums, if nums bracket I mod 2 is equal to 0, we said we're going to remove everything that's not even. Well, then I'll just move I forward. Ignore. That's what that means. Ignore, because it's even. Else, what should I do if it is not even? We're going to pop it. Pop that index. And then let's print nums. It's going to make me save it. I'll just save the example here. So what I've got left is nothing but even numbers. All right. That's the end of this lesson.